Hi, and welcome to Education Roundtable. My name is Larry Petraccaro, and with me tonight is co-host Johanna Wright. We're going to be interviewing Thelma Ramsey. A little bit of background on Thelma. Thelma Ramsey is a resident of Maplewood for a decade. She's currently Assistant Director of Special Education in the East Orange School District, and she has worked in the East Orange District as a speech pathologist, transition specialist, special education supervisor, assistant principal over curriculum instruction. So I had quite a varied and exposed background in education. So Thelma, welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
So let me start with what I think is a fairly simple question, but maybe your answer will indicate it isn't.
Okay.
What's the essence of your role in the district?
Well, the essence of my role is to work on the OCR agreement that went into effect in March of 2014. Well, they came in March of 2014, and the agreement was settled, and I'm satisfying the response to the agreement in terms of giving the district some recommendations as to how they can address the disparity of students of color in advanced placement classes, as well as the disproportionality of students of color receiving discipline referrals and being suspended in the South Orange Maplewood School District. So all of that, at the end of it, I will prepare a report with findings and then recommendations for the district to move forward so that they can remedy those two situations.
Now, the impetus for the complaint, was that the advanced placement? Was that the disciplinary activity? Was it a group of parents, or was it something?
There was a complaint filed to the Office of Civil Rights and also to the ACLU. The ACLU was the discipline, the Office of Civil Rights was the advanced placement. Those were complaints that were filed by, I'm not sure if it was a group of parents in the district or one parent. I'm not sure what group actually filed the complaint. I just got a copy of the complaint, but there was a complaint filed with the Office of Civil Rights, yes.
And how then, when the complaint is filed, does the Office of Civil Rights decide on its validity, if you will?
I'm not sure I follow.
Oh, okay. I mean, somebody makes a complaint, and do they act just on the complaint itself, or do they investigate to verify?
Oh, no, they investigate.
That's
they
what I was
investigate.
getting
Okay,
at.
yes, they investigate. They come in, they do a full investigation. They look at district policy. They look at data in the district in regards to classroom placement. They look at test scores. They look at are there any achievement gaps. They look at staffing. They do a full investigation and then give a report on their findings. And that's how they develop the agreement based on their findings. And then they make recommendations relative to those findings.
Johanna, is there anything you want to ask?
Wow. Welcome to Education Roundtable.
Thank you.
I was wondering, do you see any challenges as you continue your work in the district with the Office of Civil Rights and the things that you have to?
Well, some of the challenges may be relative to some of the timelines because this is work that I'm doing in addition to my work, as well as the running of the district itself and working in a school district. Sometimes you have a great plan of doing things in a systematic manner on different time frames, but something in the district may happen, so you may not be able to meet with certain people at certain times. So anytime you have to reschedule or not make a certain meeting, that sets a timeline back, even if it's by a week. So when people feel that you may be missing deadlines or needing to meet certain deadlines, you have to keep into account that the district has to continue to run. Things happen in the district. Anybody that works in a school district, things happen every day in a school district. Things happen in high schools every day that may preclude you from being able to go in and do some observations or go in and speak to administration or so forth. So, and then those things have to be rescheduled, which sometimes can take another additional week or additional 2 weeks. So I think sometimes timing is a challenge. Another challenge could be that this is a new frontier, I believe, for South Orange Maplewood. This has been a district that has been cited for excellence.
Yes.
For years. It's been a blue ribbon district. It's been excellent in terms of people move here for the school district and have historically moved here for the school district. And to have someone have to investigate the charge that you are not servicing your students of color well, it's unsettling for some, and people may not want to air that is this situation that's going on here. And it's not that it's just going on here, it's a national conversation that there are disparities with students of color and white students across the nation. So it's not something that is just germane to the South Orange Maplewood School District. This is a national conversation. But it's difficult for people to look at their district from a deficit perspective because they've been so often looking at it from a position of excellence. So when you have to start looking at, well, where are we deficient, people bristle a little bit. And I think that's been a little bit of a challenge because it's hard to hear that you're not doing something well when you've been cited for doing something well, I mean, for so many years. So
Now, are you looking at just a high school, or are you looking at middle school, elementary school, the entire district, or just a portion of it?
right now, the agreement spoke specifically to high school, but I'm looking at high school, middle school, and eventually elementary school because that drives what happens. The foundation of students' education starts at elementary school. So what happens in elementary school certainly has an impact on middle school, which has an impact on high school. So I cannot not go backwards and look all the way back at elementary school and what's happening there. The thing, too, about this school district is that as the students get older, although I believe the percentage of white students is greater in elementary school, by the time they get to high school, the number of African American students is greater than the number of white students. So that's something that happens incrementally as they go from primary to secondary.
In terms of a couple of things that you talked about, you mentioned the discipline, you mentioned the AP, and you mentioned the issues going on through all the schools. Do you have to prioritize what you need to work on first? Because you mentioned that you have an issue with time. We all have issues with time, I suppose, in some respects. But
Absolutely.
if you have to prioritize, what do you think is the issue you would address?
Wow, that's a hard question because everything is, in my mind, is a priority. But we definitely have to prioritize, and that is going to be a discussion that we have with the board. Once I do a preliminary findings report with them, that will be happening later this week. I will ask them, what do we think we want to prioritize? But if I think quickly, communication in the district is a huge issue. And that's something that can be worked on almost immediately. And that's for everybody. That's not just students of color. Communication is an issue across race, socioeconomic background. That's an issue. So that's one big area. There are achievement gaps in every area, elementary, middle, and high. So those are some things that I would be looking to address in terms of tackling the achievement gap. And the other thing is the use of data and working with the district in effectively using data to make programmatic decisions as well as instructional decisions.
Yeah, that's quite a bit that you mentioned. It's interesting that in this conversation about the elementary schools, because Johanna had helped me set up a education roundtable with 3 young women from the high school.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that continues to amaze me about the high school students is when you get to really talk to them, they're such a talented, perspective, they're an intelligent bunch.
Very.
But what the three of them said, and one of the girls was white, one of the girls was black, and one of the girls was of a mixed race. Okay, so I guess that kind of covers the word. But their point was that this all started, they felt that by the time kids were in the third grade, they were kind of tracked. Actually tracked, but tracked in a way that made it difficult for them to move out of those tracks. More like a rut than a track. if you
Right,
will.
right.
That being the case, if that's the case, and you're talking about using data is kind of interesting too, because you know, it always seems to me that the first thing you got to do is identify the problem. You can't
Exactly.
solve a problem without identifying it.
Right.
And it's important to make sure you haven't identified it incorrectly.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But you know, in terms of what they told me, and I tend to believe that they're right, you know, without any data. But you know, now you've got an issue where what you're trying to address a disparity in the high school when the problem started in the third grade.
Right.
So
right.
what are your thoughts about that? How do you?
Well, I think from the student's perspective, what they see is their class compilation changing
Yes.
as they matriculate through school. So where their classes may have been maybe half African American, half white, or a mixture of all ethnicities, as they progress and as they see their classes, if they're students who are high achievers, let's say, if they're students that are high achievers, they see their class become whiter, for lack of a better term, in terms of the compilation. So you see by the time you're in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, if you're a bright student, if you're a student who does very well, you may be one of a student of color that may be the only student in your class that's in an advanced placement class. And that's by the time you're in 7th and 8th grade. Or you may be one of 3 students of color out of a class of 20, 25. And quite the opposite, what you see for our students of color is if they're struggling, if they're special ed and have an IEP, you'll be in a class where they're all students of color. So you don't have that racial balance. You don't have that racial mix. And that's what our district tends to celebrate, our diversity. So what it appears to be is that there's some within district segregation. I don't know that it's done purposely. It just has happened that way over the years. And that's part of what this work will hopefully work on, help the district work to do better in that area.
Well, in some respects, then, it almost sounds like the diversity that we cherish, and I think most of us come here for that diversity.
Yes,
I think it
yes,
is something,
yes.
not something that's accidental. I think it's something that we choose.
Right.
It's what we cherish is creating the problem you're talking about, in a way, right? I mean, if this were an all-white district, I mean, you wouldn't have that.
Right,
Is that-
right. Or you would have it for a different reason, because every society
Interesting.
has we are always separating a subgroup. So even if it was all white, it would be by socioeconomic status, it would be who lived up the hill and who lived down the hill, you know, so it would probably still be, but because color and race is such
So visible.
it's so visible, it's obvious, you know.
Yeah.
So if I go in a classroom and 9 kids have on glasses and 2 don't, then I can say, oh, all the kids with glasses on are smart, you know. You know, so if you can always break it into a subgroup regardless of where you sit. So, but because race is so obvious, that makes it, you know, the issue that we need to address.
Right now, we're going to have to address a timeout. So if you can bear with us,
Okay.
we'll be right back.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Hi, and welcome back to Education Roundtable. I'm Larry Petraccaro with Johanna Wright and with Thelma Ramsey. We've been talking about the Office of Civil Rights complaint that had been filed and some of the things that we have to look at, and most importantly, what are the things that we're going to have to do to make the district the kind of district that we all cherish and we want to be a part of. So with that, I'm going to ask Johanna. We were talking before during the break, and there's a couple of questions, so begin.
Yes, Ms. Ramsey, we have quite a diverse population, and the racial makeup of our district, does it create special issues or challenges, problems because of our diversity, which may be a different face from other districts?
I won't say that it necessarily creates problems, but the staff that works directly with students could stand to be more diverse. It appears that the instructional staff at every level, there's very little content area staff members that are of color. And it's not that it's not a good thing for a student to not have a teacher of color, to have a teacher of color, but it's important for students of color to be able to identify with teachers and people who work in education that look like them and share some of the same experiences or have similar experiences to what they have. It is very important for African American students to have a sense of belonging. So if you go your whole school career and you don't have one teacher of color, then you don't have that connection, as it were, as some of what the white students experience. As I've been in the schools, I see the connection that the white students have with teachers, just even if it's informal. If it's informal, you see they have some camaraderie. You don't see that with some of the African American students, many of the African American students, because the teachers are just not there. Not to say that they may not have that same affinity or relationship with white teachers, because they certainly do. But if we were to do research and we were to look up things that talk about the connections that students have, usually students are connected with people who look like them, who have their same background. If we talk about high student achievement and higher learning, students of color who attend historically black colleges and universities do better than students who attend mainstream traditional universities, because most of the students on campus are of color, most of the professors on campus are of color, and they have higher achievement rates, and there's data that speaks to that. So that alone can tell you that there needs to be a connection. Students do better when they're connected to an adult. African American students do better when they're nurtured and there's a connection to an adult. If those connections aren't there, or they feel that there is no connection to them as a person for whatever reason, they usually don't perform. They perform better when they are connected to a person. They really do.
Have you noticed any other challenges are there any other challenges you're aware of?
Right now, no. As I've been going around to the schools, I've been getting great information from the teachers, from the administration. They've been very forthcoming and open with information and sharing. I've been telling them what we've been finding, what we've been seeing. They've been, I don't think in a lot of ways they've been surprised. Some of it they knew. Some of it some things were surprising, like, oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. So I think just pointing out some things, and I think sometimes when you look at it from another set of eyes, because if you're there all the time, some things you don't see, or there's things that you miss. So I'm coming in with a fresh set of eyes. Although I live in the district, I've worked primarily my career has been in an urban district, and So to look at it from my perspective is a little bit different, and I see things a little bit differently than the people who probably worked in this district for their whole career see things.
Right.
And I say that because I hear a lot as I'm going around and in the community, the comparison of South Orange Maplewood to Milburn and Livingston. And that's not who they really should be comparing themselves to in terms of demographics. South Orange is different than, South Orange and Maplewood are different than Milburn and Livingston in terms of per capita income, the poverty rate, people of color, families of color. It's a different demographic than those two cities, but they often compare themselves to those two cities. And the other thing is that South Orange Maplewood sits in a unique position in that it's surrounded by 3 urban cities on 3 borders. And often we don't think about that in terms of what impact that has. So a lot of our students of color, when they move to South Orange Maplewood, usually move one town over. So if I'm bordered by Newark, Irvington, parts of Union, usually those students that come to South Orange Maplewood, that's where they're moving from. They're moving from right across the border from where South Orange Maplewood sits. And those are 3 urban districts or urban cities that rest on their borders. So I think when we start to look at the demographics in a different way, that will start to create a paradigm shift, for lack of a better word, to see that we have to look at our city and our community through a different lens.
Well, you certainly have to deal with the facts, right?
Right.
Can't
right.
let,
Right.
now, there's too many people that won't let the facts get in the way of their opinions. We've got to get away from that.
Absolutely.
But let me ask you, Thelma, people might say that it's not really a school problem, it's a family problem. The kids that come in, there's problems at home, and are you penalizing all the kids who don't have those kinds of problems? So is that the case? I'm sure it's the case in sometimes, but how does that complicate the solutions that we have to implement to get to however we're going to define success? And that'll be another question for you.
Well, actually, it does complicate the situation because you want to hope that the school supports the school, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes the school is everything for the kid. And we have to, again, change our mindset as educators, and that's sometimes where, when you share a culture or you share backgrounds with students, that also helps in terms of connecting or making those connections, because you know what's going on at home, or you know what the student may be lacking at home, and that also will help you determine what you need to bring to that student. So if you say, people go into education not to become rich, of course. It's not a lucrative field at all. So if you're not there to help a child, regardless of where they came from or regardless of what their home background is, that everybody comes to education and comes to school with a different set of learning skills, a set of skills. So it doesn't, your job is to get them to the next level in whatever level that you teach. So yes, it is a home problem sometimes, but we have to teach who's sent to us. We have to educate who is sent to us. One of the superintendents that I worked for in the past, he said that parents send their best. They send you their best. They don't keep their best home. They send you what they have. They don't say, okay, Johnny, you're a scholar, so you stay home. I'm just going to send the others. They send you their lock, stock, and barrel who they have. So we have to deal with what we're given in terms of the students that we have to teach and we have to educate. Yes, students come prepared differently. In this community, you have students who have been in preschool since 6 weeks old, parent and mommy play groups. They've been playing soccer since they could walk, so they come with different experiences. And that creates what we call prior knowledge. So when kids come to school at kindergarten, they're much more prepared than some students who've never had a preschool experience, who have been in the care of family members or at home. So that's a different experience. So they come to school with maybe less vocabulary than other kids, but it's our job to get them to where they need to be so they can all be successful. So is it a home thing? It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both.
Are you aware of any districts that have struggled with this problem that have made significant inroads, significant successes?
Yes, as I was doing work to prepare for the RFP, I started researching some of the districts in the area. There's an AP report card that goes out every year for every state. And there are 5 states that have similar demographics to, 5 cities that have similar demographics to South Orange Maplewood that are doing rather well. Actually, Union, right next door, is doing rather well. West Orange, which has similar demographics, Verona, and Cedar Grove have been doing. They have what's called the AP Honor Roll, and in the AP Honor Roll, the goal is to move more students of color to by giving them access to AP classes. So when we talk about access, we talk about opening up the admissions criteria or changing the admissions criteria to AP courses. And then the district will have to decide, are we wanting to just have students have more access, or are we more interested in students who we give access getting the higher scores on the AP exam, the 3s, the 4s, and the 5s, and so forth. So that's a district decision that, are we looking to open it up to all so that students can have access, or are we more concerned with the students scoring the higher school, being able to score high and do well on those tests? Because it's two different things.
Well, the districts that you mentioned, which approach did they take? Was it just an access approach, or?
It was, some of it was access, some of it was providing support services for students that were in AP that traditionally weren't, in terms of pre-AP camps in the summer, some opportunities for students to test the classes, so maybe like a class audit, for instance, to say, because some students won't even try to get to try AP class because they don't think they're going to be successful. So some of these districts gave students the opportunity to take AP courses or to sample an AP course without punishment, without repercussion that you're going to fail the course or whatever. So that way a student can get in, have some success, and say, oh, I can do this, and then the next semester or the next year actually sign up to take the course. So there are different, there's so many things that districts can do to open the doors a little bit more of AP.
Well, we've only got about 30 seconds, so in that period of time, can you give us a brief description of how you would measure success? How would you identify that we've got where we want to be?
Okay. I would probably not measure success by the number of students of color that go into AP, because I think we need to measure success by all students achieving at every level. So, and I think that's the lens that we need to be looking through.
Okay, well, Thelma, Ramsey, thank you. And thank you for joining us on Education Roundtable.